Madam President,
Democratic whip.
I ask consent the quorum call be suspended.
We're not in a quorum call.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I rise today to speak about a critical role played by U.S. attorneys and United States Marshals in keeping America safe. Law enforcement is a team effort, and we need officials at the federal, state, and local level working together to stop crime in this country and to keep people safe in their homes and in their neighborhoods. It was only 2 months ago that I came to the floor of this Senate to request unanimous consent for the Senate to take up and confirm 5 U.S. attorney nominations. Despite the outstanding credentials of all these nominees, one senator, the junior senator from Arkansas, refused to allow the Senate to confirm 5 nominees for U.S. attorney positions by a voice vote, a tradition in the Senate. That senator's objections had nothing to do with the nominees. He said so. Nothing to do with their records and nothing to do with their qualifications. Well, after he was confronted on the floor of the Senate, he lifted his objection. We were able to get those U.S. attorneys confirmed and put them to work. And there's work to be done in every state in the union to make this a safer nation. We believe in law enforcement. We believe in it at every level. And when it's delayed, putting professionals in place, that delay can cost lives. You can stand up and say, I don't want to defund the police, and then refuse to fill vacancies when it comes to law enforcement. That's inconsistent. Sadly, we find ourselves in the same position today, 2 months later, with the same senator from Arkansas. He's again objecting to the swift nomination of U.S. Attorney and U.S. Marshal nominations. In short, this same senator is making it increasingly difficult for us to prosecute violent criminals, track down fugitives, protect Americans from gang violence, cybercrime, terrorism, and fraud. It's worth taking a moment to consider what U.S. attorneys and U.S. Marshals do. The positions that they hold are nearly as old as the nation itself. Both U.S. Marshal and U.S. Attorney positions were created by the Judiciary Act of 1789, passed by the first Congress, signed into law by President George Washington. The specific responsibilities have changed over time, but the core function's the same. This is the federal answer to enforcing the law, prosecuting crimes, and protecting our communities. U.S. attorneys are charged with prosecuting all federal criminal offenses. U.S. Marshals have the responsibility of risking their lives to protect federal judges in courthouses, tracking down fugitives, and assisting in locating and recovering missing children, just to mention a few. In short, U.S. attorneys and U.S. Marshals play a critical role in enforcing the law, promoting public safety, and protecting our communities. So it's sad that the same junior senator from Arkansas is blocking the confirmation of 6 U.S. attorneys and 2 U.S. Marshals today. Doing so threatens public safety across America and puts millions of Americans at risk, including the most vulnerable. Despite all the tough talk we hear from many of these senators on the other side of the aisle about their dedication to law and order and keeping America safe, it is a Republican senator who refuses to take up and confirm these nominations in an expeditious way. Before I ask for consent for the Senate to confirm the nominees, I'd like to recognize the Majority Leader.
To the Majority Whip, and thank you for your good work as Chair of Judiciary and for your talk on this issue, and I thank my colleague from Minnesota who's been passionate about getting this done as well. So I rise today to join with my Democratic colleagues in support of these U.S. attorneys and marshals who have single-handedly been delayed for weeks by one senator, the junior senator from Arkansas. For decades, Democrats and Republicans have regularly cooperated to swiftly confirm the many, many individuals selected by each president to serve in their administration. Regardless of the party in the White House, both sides have long agreed that a president deserves to have his or her administration in place quickly. That doesn't mean we don't disagree, but it does mean when nominees are held up, opposed, or blocked, it's for a legitimate purpose, not for leverage and partisan games to score political points at the expense of public safety. Most of us still believe in that principle, but sadly, not all of us. On the other side of the aisle, a small group of obstructionist Republicans has spent the last year hijacking the rules of the Senate to place an unprecedented number of holds on hundreds of presidential appointees. Let me repeat, this isn't about a few nominees here and there. We're talking about hundreds of nominees. In this case, my colleague from Arkansas is holding back 6 U.S. attorneys and 2 U.S. marshals, vital roles in preserving public safety. The level of partisan obstruction is a new low for the Senate. When President Trump was in office, every single U.S. attorney and U.S. marshal, every single one, was confirmed by this chamber with unanimous consent. Yes, we had deep, deep problems with the Trump Department of Justice, but never did we demand a roll call vote just to confirm nominees like these. In fact, the last time the Senate had to hold a roll call vote, listen to this, the last time the Senate had to hold a roll call vote to confirm a U.S. attorney was half a century ago, nearly half a century ago, 1975. And it's not hard to see why. U.S. attorneys and marshals aren't political positions. Their job is literally to keep Americans safe. They're federal prosecutors. They're federal law enforcement. If my Republican colleagues on the other side truly care about public safety, why are they obstructing the appointments of individuals whose jobs would precisely be to maintain public safety in the first place? It's Alice in Wonderland logic. Now, this isn't just about breaking precedent. Right now, communities across the country still don't have their U.S. attorneys on the job because of obstruction here in the Senate. Districts in Georgia, Ohio, Nevada, Minnesota, Michigan, Illinois, they're all still waiting for U.S. attorneys. Sadly, the families who live in these communities shouldn't have to pay the price for what a very small number of Republicans are doing here, but sadly, that's what's happening. It's a textbook example of why Americans are frustrated with the Senate, frustrated with their government. On the other hand, I want to thank my Democratic colleagues for advocating on behalf of U.S. attorneys and marshals. I thank my friend Senator Durbin, Chairman of Judiciary, for speaking passionately. I thank Senator Klobuchar for coming to floor to speak. And I thank Senators Rosen and Cortez Masto and Duckworth and Brown, who have also spoken. One way or another, these nominees will be confirmed by the Senate. Republican obstructionists can try to delay, but they cannot stop these individuals from ultimately going through. If the holds on these nominees are not dropped, I'll be filing cloture on them, and we will schedule votes to advance them until the job is finished. If that means more late nights, then more late nights are coming. If it means vote series with 6 or 7 or 8 votes in a row, then that's what we'll do. Most of us don't want to go down that road, and we don't have to. The overwhelming majority of Democrats and Republicans want to preserve the decades of precedent and comedy that has enabled us to work together on nominees. So let me say for one last time, delaying the appointment of U.S. attorneys and U.S. marshals over cheap partisan games ultimately makes Americans less safe and weakens law enforcement. I urge my Republican colleague to drop his obstruction, or else he can explain to his colleagues why we have to schedule a dizzyingly large number of roll call votes just to push these nominees through. I thank my colleagues for their work and yield to Senator Durbin.
I thank the Majority Leader, and I would like to just add, there must be those following the debate are wondering, what's the basis for the junior senator from Arkansas opposing these 8 nominees? There must be something wrong with them. There must be something in their background that doesn't add up. I mean, consider the variety of individuals who are being held up by the junior senator from Arkansas. Ryan Buchanan of Georgia to be U.S. Attorney for the Northern District. Jason Ferguson of Nevada to be U.S. Attorney for the District of Nevada. Andrew Lugar of Minnesota to be U.S. Attorney for the District of Minnesota, and the senator from Minnesota will speak to that in just a moment. Mark Totten of Michigan to be U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Michigan. Marissa Darden of Ohio to be U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Ohio. Delia Smith of the Virgin Islands to be U.S. Attorney for the District of Virgin Islands. Eddie Frizzell, again of Minnesota, to be U.S. Marshal for the District of Minnesota. And LaDon Reynolds of Illinois to be U.S. Marshal for the Northern District of Illinois. Madam President, we looked especially at our own very closely to make sure that they were qualified to take on this federal position. Several of my colleagues are going to come to the floor today to speak about the nominees being held up by one senator. So rather than delving into the records of all the 8 nominees, let me just focus on the one in Illinois. Chief LaDon Reynolds, nominated to serve as U.S. Marshal for the Northern District. Chief Reynolds has served the people of Illinois for nearly 30 years. He joined the Oak Park Police Department in 1994, rising steadily through the ranks until his appointment in 2019 as chief. In addition to his service at the Oak Park Police Department, Chief Reynolds serves on the Illinois Law Enforcement Training Board, Illinois Commission on Discrimination and Hate, and Executive Board of the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police. In short, Chief Reynolds is eminently qualified to serve as U.S. Marshal for the Northern District of Illinois. There is simply no valid basis to delay his confirmation, and I have yet to hear the senator from Arkansas come forward with a bill of particulars of why he has decided to single out the people that I just mentioned to deny them an opportunity to make communities safer across America. At a time of high crime and the need for a coordinated effort at every single level, there is absolutely no valid explanation of why these individuals are being withheld from their responsibilities in these communities. We need to have law enforcement taken seriously and respected. Holding up nominations for no particular reason other than a political issue that may bother the senator is certainly no reason for us to jeopardize the safety of innocent people living in these communities who depend on these federal law enforcement officials to do their job. At this point, I'd like to make a unanimous consent request. Madam President, I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to the consideration of the following nominations en bloc. Calendar numbers 660, 661, 662, 663, 739, 740, 741, 742. That the Senate vote on the nominations en bloc without intervening action or debate. The motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate. That any statement related to the nominations be printed in the record, and that the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action.
Is there objection?
Madam President.
Senator from Arkansas.
Yeah, reserving the right to object, which I most certainly will do, I'll just address what the senator from Illinois said. He said he's heard no explanation for why I'm objecting to every Department of Justice nominee moving forward on a fast-track basis. That's false. He's heard my explanation repeatedly. He may not like it, but he's heard it. I'm taking this stance on behalf of 4 brave U.S. Marshals who defended the federal courthouse in Portland from left-wing street militias associated with the BLM movement and Antifa. In the summer of 2020, this was part of riots all across our country. But in Portland, these riots were particularly dangerous. Marshals were targeted with lasers to blind them, with ball bearings, with fireworks. There were efforts to barricade them inside the courthouse and set it on fire to burn them alive. These marshals are heroes, and they should be celebrated. Anyone who says they support law enforcement should be defending these marshals. Yet, not surprisingly, left-wing activists and left-wing organizations like the ACLU are coming to the defense of the left-wing street militia that attacked these marshals and tried to burn down the Portland courthouse, suing marshals on frivolous grounds. Many of these marshals are being defended by the Department of Justice, as is the Department of Justice's long-standing custom and practice to either provide representation for its law enforcement officers when they are sued in court, or if there's some conflict, to reimburse them and pay their legal fees. 4 marshals are not being defended, though. These 4 marshals are GS-11s, GS-13s. They've been serving our country for a lifetime. Many of them are veterans of foreign wars. They face financial bankruptcy and ruin because the Department of Justice won't represent them. In many cases, won't even give them an answer or explain why the representation was denied. Well, when I learned of this, I demanded answers. And the Department of Justice had no answers. So if my colleagues think that I'm going to just roll out the red carpet for Department of Justice nominees to be confirmed to politically connected positions while GS-11s and GS-13s are hung out to dry, they have another thing coming. Now, some of you may say, well, maybe there's investigations underway. Maybe these officers engaged in misconduct. We don't know. They won't give us an answer. But here's what we do know. All four of them, all four, are currently on unrestricted active duty. Unrestricted active duty. And I would add, all four are in the Special Operations Group for the Marshal Service, which means to say they are the marshals who are most likely to be deployed nationwide and put in circumstances that risk their lives and call for them to use violence, to include lethal violence. Now, I don't know the circumstances that led to the denial of representation of these four marshals, or why some of them are being strung along, but I have to assume that if they are on unrestricted active duty in the Special Operations Group for the Marshal Service, that Merrick Garland and Vanita Gupta can't have any doubts about their fitness to serve or their action for all those weeks in Portland when they defended the courthouse from left-wing street militias. Now, I understand my colleagues want to get their U.S. attorneys or the U.S. Marshals confirmed. Maybe there's people at Maine Justice they want to get confirmed as well. That's very simple. We could do it today. We could hear from Merrick Garland or Vanita Gupta that they will defend these four U.S. Marshals in court. Or we could hear a satisfactory answer of why they won't defend the marshals in court. Is it because they were standing up to a left-wing street militia? Is it because they were taking a stance to defend federal property from Antifa? I don't know. We can't get an answer. Maybe my Democratic colleagues could get an answer. But to think that I'm just going to roll over and allow the Senate to fast-track nominees to the department when GS-11s and GS-13s, law enforcement professionals, are being hung out to dry? Sorry. These are people, and I've talked to them, who were worried about buying Christmas gifts for their children last year because they were going to have to pay legal fees, who worry about paying the mortgage next year, next month, who worry about sending their kids to camp. Sorry if your lawyers have to wait for a week or two to get confirmed to the U.S. Attorney's position. I'm worried about four heroes who defended federal property from left-wing street militias. So yeah, I do object.
Madam President,
Objection is heard.
try to follow that logic, if you will. The senator is so committed to law enforcement, he is so committed to U.S. Marshals, he won't let us appoint people to fill vacancies. He takes a case in Portland, Oregon, where he wrote a letter to the Department of Justice within the last 2 weeks asking for the status of their defense of these 74 individuals. Now, he knows, and we all know, that before we can take any action for anybody, we need a confidentiality waiver, a privacy statement. That's routine in all of our offices. Each one of these individuals, despite the interest of the senator, junior senator from Arkansas, has their own legal right to determine whether or not they want to waive any privacy so that they can tell the public or discuss even with the senator their plight and how they want to address it. There is also something called the attorney-client privilege, which the senator, I'm sure, is aware of. That, too, is a privilege which allows the individual to deny ordinary access to information if they so choose. It's their decision. So the complication of this situation is ignored by the senator from Arkansas. He is valiantly standing for U.S. Marshals that he won't appoint. He believes they're important and give their lives to their country, and many have, and yet he won't let them stand up and do that on behalf of our communities. He wants an answer to his letter, and until he gets an answer to his letter, then we're not going to be able to put law enforcement in place to deal with crime in this country. We can make all the statements, run all the ads, make all the speeches on the floor about a concern for safety in our communities, and then the junior senator from Arkansas says, I want you to be safe in your community, but you can't have a U.S. attorney to prosecute those would-be terrorists. You can't have a U.S. Marshal in pursuit of fugitives from justice. You can't have a U.S. Marshal to protect the courthouse of the men and women who go to work there every day and risk their lives for the administration of justice. This is upside down. We are talking about 74 individuals. The Department of Justice has said they are going to defend 70 of them. One is a question, I assume, whether he was acting in the scope of his employment, and 3 are under review. And for that reason, this senator has decided to stop the administration of justice in these jurisdictions, or at least slow it down. That makes no sense whatsoever. The basis for objecting to these individuals has nothing to do with their individual qualifications. He didn't raise a single question. All he said is, your lawyers are going to have to wait, as if these were just lawyers waiting for a fee. These are men and women willing to serve as he serves in public service. It's more than just lawyers. Not that there's anything wrong with that category of Americans, but it's individuals who are willing to engage in public service. And why are we in such a hurry? We're in the second year of this president's administration. It's time to fill these vacancies. As Senator Schumer said earlier on the floor, there are several on the Republican side who just want to drag this out interminably in the hopes that they can stop the Biden administration from filling these vacancies. My colleague from Arkansas asked whether the DOJ is representing federal law enforcement personnel who protected the federal courthouse in Portland. The Fox News headline about his letter said, quote, Cotton places hold on DOJ nominees after refusal to defend U.S. Marshals involved in Portland Antifa riots. Here's the reality. The Department of Justice often represents or pays private counsel to represent federal employees sued in their individual capacity. But there are some constraints, and I've mentioned them. For example, regulations require the Department of Justice can only represent employees for actions within the scope of their employment. For example, protecting the Portland courthouse, which clearly is within the scope. And the Department of Justice can only represent them if doing so would be in the interest of the United States. It clearly would be if they're defending against terrorists. The senator knows this. You know why he knows it? Because the Department of Justice responded to his letter. He just didn't like the response. It didn't go far enough. The department said the Department of Justice strongly supports the provision of representation to federal officers acting in the line of duty. The department also told him that it represents or is paid for private counsel to represent 70 of these federal employees who have been sued in connection with the events in Portland, while denying only a single request for representation. I don't know the facts of that denial. I don't know if there's been a privacy waiver signed. I don't know if this individual says I have an attorney-client privilege and I don't have to tell the senator from Arkansas or anyone what the circumstances are. Yet the senator from Arkansas is now demanding to know why the Department of Justice denied this one request for representation and why it's still reviewing 3 others. That's right. He's blocking the confirmation of critical law enforcement officials across the United States until he gets an answer that he likes. The DOJ has already explained that it cannot comment further, and here's what they said. In light of significant confidentiality interest and applicable privileges, as I mentioned earlier, the privacy laws and attorney-client privilege. DOJ's regulations make it clear that communication about an employee's request for representation are protected by the attorney-client privilege, and the Privacy Act prevents DOJ from disclosing the personnel records of an employee, and that's as it should be. Let me be clear, these privileges protect the privacy of the very law enforcement personnel whose interests the senator from Arkansas claims to represent. My Republican colleagues frequently claim to be the party of law and order, but in this matter and others, they're the ones playing politics with law enforcement. Because the Department of Justice will not snap to the senator's request and violate standing federal laws, because they won't ignore and violate those laws of privacy and attorney-client privilege, the senator from Arkansas is prepared to endanger the communities and law enforcement until he gets his way. I've heard my Republican colleagues time and again claiming the Biden administration and Democratic mayors in big cities are responsible for violent crime. They claim that this increase in violent crime has nothing to do with the fact that America is awash in guns. But the reality is that the increase in violent crime started during the last administration, under President Trump. It is impacting communities led by both Democratic and Republican officials, and it is being driven by gun violence. FBI statistics show that 77% of homicides in 2020 were committed with guns. In Chicago, that number's higher. 93% of homicides last year in Chicago committed by gun. We face a gun violence crisis. The Judiciary Committee has held 5 hearings last year on ways to reduce it. I'm going to continue it this year. But if we're going to address this crisis, we're going to need senators from both parties to show some courage and to admit that gun violence in America is a real problem. We also need Republicans to stop defending the violent insurrection that took place right in this chamber on January 6, 2021. The senator was present. All of us were. We'll never forget that day as long as we live. 5 brave police officers lost their lives as a result of what the Republican National Committee, in its official policy position, calls legitimate political discourse. This is nothing new. Last year, Congress passed the American Rescue Plan, $350 billion for state and local governments. We made sure that that funding was going to hire good law enforcement officials and invested in community violence intervention. Not a single Republican senator approved it. There are areas where we are working together on bipartisan legislation, and I hope we will continue to. And last year, President Biden signed 3 laws in that area. I hope my Republican colleagues will take a lesson from today. If we're going to stand together, then let us all stand behind the federal law enforcement team. When President Trump asked for his team, Democrats in the Senate cooperated and gave those people to him. They weren't the people we would have chosen, but he was president and had the right to do his best to protect this nation. So does President Biden. President Biden has called for significant increases for our police in the burn justice program and the cops hiring program, but this important funding has been delayed by debate over appropriations. We shouldn't delay the appointment of these key law enforcement officials either. Again and again, Democrats are working to support law enforcement and to keep Americans safe. Sometimes we are joined in these efforts by Republicans and other times not. But there is no benefit to law enforcement when senators block the confirmation of well-qualified U.S. Attorney and U.S. Marshal nominees as we see today. I urge the senator from Arkansas to stand up for law enforcement. A political story on Fox is not worth undermining the lives of innocent Americans. We've got to end this obstruction and let these nominees protect and serve. And I now yield to Senator Klobuchar.
Yep. Madam President.
The junior senator from Arkansas.
I'm surprised to hear the Senator of Illinois continue to refer to this as a political issue or a political story when we have career law enforcement officers who put their lives on the line to defend federal property from left-wing street militias, and they're worried if they can put food on the table for their children, if they can buy them gifts at Christmas, if they can put braces on them, if they can send them to summer camp. I don't consider that a political issue. I consider it standing up for law enforcement. Not just these 4, but every deputy marshal around the country who forms the backbone of the Marshal Service. The backbone of the Marshal Service all across the country, who have to wonder if maybe they're going to be the next one to be hung out to dry by the Department of Justice if they confront a rioter with the wrong politics. It's not a political issue. Now, the senator from Illinois continues to speak about confidentiality and attorney-client privilege, as if this is all information that's been communicated to these 4 marshals, and they just don't want to share it with us here in the Senate. That's not the case. 3 of them, I would say, haven't heard anything. In a lawsuit that's almost 18 months old, they've been told nothing yet. That's why they've had to go out and retain their own counsel. 1 of them was denied representation with no more basis than saying it's not in the interest of the United States of America. Well, forgive me if I don't trust Vanita Gupta to determine what is in the interest of the United States when it comes to defending law enforcement. These marshals are told that these determinations are final and there is no appeal and there is no recourse. Well, I'm the recourse now. The senator from Illinois keeps talking about these urgent law enforcement needs. In his own state of Illinois, I would point out that the position that is empty has been empty since 2018. If it was so urgent, the senator of Illinois could have cooperated with the Trump administration and tried to fill it then. Or these U.S. attorney positions that are empty. President Biden fired all U.S. attorneys a year ago. If it was so urgent to have Senate-confirmed U.S. attorneys in position, he could have asked them to continue to serve until he was able to find suitable replacements. The senator from Illinois also said, well, Senator Cotton got his letter responded to. I'm not looking for some courtesy exchange of letters here. I'm trying to protect 4 U.S. Marshals who defended the Portland courthouse from a left-wing street militia who have been hung out to dry, imperiling the confidence of all marshals across the country in whether or not their political leadership at the Department of Justice will back them up when they're in a controversy. And the department still won't answer that. They won't take any steps to answer it. They simply hide behind confidentiality and privilege, just like they're hiding behind it with these 4 U.S. Marshals. After 18 months, what's so complicated? As the senator from Illinois said, they are representing 70 others. What makes these 4 so different? Maybe they engaged in misconduct? Is that possible, given the fact that they're all on unrestricted active duty? In the Special Operations Group, the element of the Marshals most likely to have to use violence to include lethal violence? Would Merrick Garland and Vanita Gupta really send them back out on the streets if they had engaged in misconduct in Portland? These marshals deserve better. And they could get better if the Department of Justice would just agree to represent them, or if they would give a satisfactory, fact-based answer about why they're not representing them. Maybe some of my Democratic colleagues could call Merrick Garland or Vanita Gupta and ask them for such an answer. Or maybe just call them and say, why don't you represent these 4 marshals? That seems like the obvious, satisfactory outcome for everyone here. U.S. Marshals are represented in court as they should be, and we can go back to fast-tracking Department of Justice nominees. But until we get to that outcome, we won't be fast-tracking department nominees, because I will continue to stand up for these brave men of law enforcement who deserve better from this Department of Justice.
Madam President.
The senior senator from Minnesota.
Madam President, I rise today in support of the 2 nominees from my state. Andy Lugar, who's been nominated to be the U.S. Attorney for the District of Minnesota, and Eddie Frizzell, a veteran, who's been nominated, serving our country bravely overseas, who's been nominated to be the U.S. Marshal. And I was sitting here thinking to myself, as I listened to Senator Cotton, that there were a lot of things I disagreed with the Trump Justice Department. Many things. But never once did I think about holding up the U.S. Attorney of Arkansas or of Arizona or of Illinois because I disagreed with Donald Trump. Why? Because as someone who used to be in law enforcement, I understand how important these positions are. And I don't think they should be held hostage simply because he happens to have a disagreement about something the Justice Department is doing. Because there were so many things that I disagreed with Bill Barr and his associates with. And not only did I support the nominee for Minnesota that Donald Trump put up for both the Marshal and the U.S. Attorney and voted for them, but I actually issued a public statement saying that they were qualified. And I worked with them, and I talked to them ahead of time, and I actually liked them because they might not have been, as the senator from Illinois pointed out, my first choice, but there was something larger than politics and my first choice. My first choice was our justice system, our country, and the safety of our citizens. And right now, in my home state, they do not understand why a senator from Arkansas is holding up law enforcement in the state of Minnesota. As the chief federal law enforcement officer for their respective districts, U.S. attorneys are critical to ensuring that American communities are kept safe. This role is so vital that the founders created the position during the very first Congress as part of the Judiciary Act of 1789. This is the same act that created the Attorney General and the structure of the courts. Today in my state, the U.S. Attorney leads a team of nearly 130 dedicated law enforcement professionals, including 65 assistant U.S. attorneys. The office is responsible for bringing to justice those who commit a range of federal crimes, including drug trafficking, child exploitation, cyber crimes, and national security matters. After 9/11, it was the U.S. Attorney's Office in my home state of Minnesota that was involved in what was known as the hijacker that got caught. A citizen turned him in, and it was our U.S. Attorney's Office that worked with New York on that case. It was our U.S. Attorney's Office that took on the second biggest white-collar case next to Madoff and won. It was our U.S. Attorney's Office under the nominee that's right now on the floor, Andy Lugar, that took on perhaps the most infamous missing children case in the country, and I know that the presiding officer, being from the state of Wisconsin, knows this case of Jacob Wetterling. Sad, tragic case, and he was able to put together the puzzle pieces that had eluded law enforcement because of his vast experience working as an assistant in the state of New York, working in Minnesota in this very office as an assistant and working his way up. And he was able to put together that case with local, state, and federal law enforcement and solve it and bring some justice and bring some closure for the Wetterling family, who will never see their son again. That's Andy Lugar. This is a guy that took on a sex trafficking case on his own with a young woman trafficked in the city of Rochester and brought the case to trial. This is someone who has reached out to our communities, our Native American communities, and gotten things done. And this is someone, based on my discussions, Senator Cotton, with the Trump White House, that they would have actually, after firing all the U.S. attorneys, would have had him back. He decided to go to the private sector for a while, and now he is ready to come back. So this is someone who I have gotten calls about since you put this hold on all the U.S. attorneys from Republican members of Congress who think we need him in place. I have gotten calls from Republicans across my state who want to put this guy in place. We have double jeopardy here for my state because you are not only holding up, Senator Cotton, the attorney, U.S. attorney for the state of Minnesota, you are also holding up the U.S. Marshal. Andy Lugar, the U.S. Attorney nominee, as I noted, previously led the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Minnesota from 2014 to 2017. His proven experience is exactly what is needed to handle the challenges facing law enforcement in Minnesota today. He has been waiting since January 1st to get this done because he figured it went well before the committee. So he's waiting. He's waiting to serve our state, as is our U.S. Marshal candidate. In addition to the U.S. Attorney's Office, for over 160 years, the U.S. Marshal Service has helped keep Minnesota safe, protecting public servants, tracking down and apprehending fugitives, and operating the Witness Protection Program. President Biden's nominee to serve as U.S. Marshal for the District of Minnesota, as I noted, is Eddie Frizzell. Chief Frizzell was recommended by a selection committee, as was Andy Lugar, that Senator Smith and I convened. It included leaders in Minnesota's law enforcement, advocacy, and legal communities. Eddie Frizzell brings nearly 30 years of experience in law enforcement in my state, including serving as the chief of police for the Metro Transit Police Department. As I noted, he's also a 30-year veteran of the Minnesota Army National Guard. I once met him coming off a plane after his deployment. I'll never forget that moment. As the brave soldiers are getting off that plane, I thought, I know that guy. Yeah, I was a senator now, and I knew him when he was a police officer, and I was the county attorney. 30 years, veteran, Minnesota Army National Guard, including 2 overseas deployments, one to Bosnia and another to Kuwait and Iraq. Throughout his career, he has led by example, immersing himself in the community and becoming what our newspaper called a model of persistence. His proven experience is exactly what is needed. So why haven't we been able to confirm these 2 nominees, both of whom moved through the Judiciary Committee on a voice vote with broad bipartisan support, after I, as I noted, proudly supported President Trump's nominees, who, by the way, they went in their jobs and they did their jobs. That's how we do law enforcement. That's how it's supposed to work. This hold has nothing to do with the qualifications of the nominees from my state. Instead, as Senator Durbin has just noted, Senator Cotton has put an indiscriminate hold on all Department of Justice law enforcement nominees, stalling appointments for critical positions in Illinois, Georgia, Nevada, Michigan, Ohio, the Virgin Islands, and yes, my state of Minnesota. And I'm sure if he continues this, and if Senator Schumer, as noted, is going to have to call up votes for positions where all during the Trump administration went through with consent during the Trump administration. These nominees in these states are ready to serve millions of Americans, including 5.7 million people in my state who need the leadership of a permanent U.S. attorney and U.S. Marshal. Senator Cotton is seeking information from the Department of Justice, and I hope that his questions are answered, but I cannot stand by and let him use critical law enforcement nominations as leverage. I note, and I will end with this, the timetables. During the last administration, Erica McDonald, the U.S. attorney I mentioned, former judge who had been appointed by Tim Pawlenty, who I met with in my house so I could make sure that we moved her nomination quickly. She was confirmed by the Senate, Senator Durbin, to be U.S. attorney the same day her nomination was reported by the Judiciary Committee on May 24th, 2018. Tom Heffelfinger was nominated by the way, 2 President Bushes, the first and the second President Bush. When he was nominated by President George W. Bush to be U.S. Attorney for nomination, Minnesota, his nomination was received by the Senate on September 4th, 2001. He was reported favorably by the Judiciary Committee on September 13th and confirmed by the full Senate the next day. His entire confirmation process took 10 days. And by the way, when he retired from his position, he then served on my selection committees, the U.S. attorney who had served under both President Bushes. This is how law enforcement is supposed to work. Before him, Todd Jones, who became, by the way, the head of the ATF. He was nominated by President Bill Clinton to be U.S. Attorney for Minnesota. His nomination was received in the Senate on October 7th, 1998. He was reported favorably by the Judiciary Committee the next day and confirmed by the full Senate on October 21st, 1998. His entire confirmation process took only 14 days. Finally, there was James Rosenbaum, who was nominated by President Ronald Reagan to be the U.S. Attorney for Minnesota. His nomination was received by the Senate on October 21st, 1981. He was reported favorably out of the Judiciary Committee that day and was confirmed by the full Senate that day. His entire confirmation process happened in 1 day. I hope we can get back to this tradition of cooperation and recognition that these law enforcement leaders aren't pawns in a political game. They are needed to help keep our communities safe, and they deserve to move through the Senate expeditiously. We expect sound judgment from federal law enforcement. Our constituents expect sound judgment when it comes to confirming top federal law enforcement officers for a state. And it's time to do the right thing by confirming not just Mr. Lugar and Mr. Frizzell, but the other law enforcement officers that have been held up. And I am happy to come back here day after day after day until we get this done. The people that work in the U.S. Attorney's Office, Marshal's Office, and my constituents deserve to have people in place. Thank you. I yield the floor.
The senior senator from Illinois.
Madam President, in the interest of allowing the senators who are wishing to speak an appropriate amount of time and within the confines of our upcoming vote, I ask unanimous consent that there be 40 minutes equally divided between the majority and minority, and that on the majority side be recognized in the order of Senators Rosen, Cortez Masto, Duckworth, and Brown.
Is there objection? Without objection. The junior senator from Arkansas.
I feel like ship's passing the night here. I could go on and on about the exploits of these deputy marshals when they were Rangers and Green Berets and what they did in combat. But my Democratic colleagues aren't getting to the heart of the matter. Why they are being denied representation for defending the courthouse in Portland. So I'll direct a question to the senator from Minnesota through the chair. Does she believe that these 4 U.S. Marshals should be represented in court like all other marshals are being represented?
Madam President,
The senior senator from Minnesota.
being that I'm the senator from Minnesota and I am not on the staff of the Attorney General of the United States, and I have nothing to do with the state in which this happened, I'm not aware of all the facts of this, and I think it would actually be inappropriate for me to be involved in Justice Department policy. I'm here on behalf of the people in my state, and I want to get someone in place, and I have made the case, Senator Cotton, that at no time did I not only hold up the U.S. attorneys or the marshals under Donald Trump, I actually supported the ones in my state. And I'm just asking for that same courtesy for the people of my state. We have talked about this before, and I simply believe that we should be able to get our U.S. attorneys and marshals in place, and you can do what you want to complain about what's going on in the Justice Department, to make your case to them, to go on TV about it, to make speeches in this chamber, to write letters about it, to advocate, to gather your friends who might support you on this, but you shouldn't be hurting the people of my state while you do it.
Senator from Nevada.
Thank you. Madam President, I urge my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to allow these highly qualified federal law enforcement nominations to move forward. In my state of Nevada, the position of U.S. Attorney has been unfilled for nearly a year. This position, while it plays a vital role in maintaining the rule of law and making sure that justice is carried out in our state. The continued obstruction of these critical nominees, while it impacts the public safety of Nevadans and impacts their ability to see justice served. We have a highly qualified nominee to serve as U.S. Attorney, Jason Frierson. He's a graduate of the University of Nevada, Reno, and the Boyd Law School at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. He's a former Nevada Supreme Court clerk, and he served in the district attorney's office as a public defender and as a deputy attorney general for our great state. In addition, Mr. Frierson has a long track record of fighting for hardworking Nevadans as Speaker of the Nevada Assembly. I know he will lead in his role with integrity and a deep commitment to upholding the law as the top federal prosecutor for our state. There is absolutely no basis to delay his nomination and the nominations of other U.S. attorneys and marshals around the country. Holding up these qualified nominees does not help Americans. It only leaves them unprotected. We must rise above partisan politics and do our duty to allow these key roles to be filled. For all of the people from my state of Nevada, I urge my colleagues to allow the nomination of Jason Frierson and the other nominees in this block to finally move forward. Thank you.
Madam President,
The junior senator from Arkansas.
again, I feel like ship's passing the night, not getting to the point here, so I'll address a question to the junior senator through the chair, slightly differently than what I spoke to the senator from Minnesota. If officers are returned to unrestricted active duty on the Special Operations Group, does the senator believe that they should be represented for past incidents of alleged misuse of force.
Senator, I will reiterate what my colleague from Minnesota said. I do not serve in the Judiciary Committee, and I do not serve in the Department of Justice. Therefore, I am not privy to the information that has been provided in privacy to the Department of Justice. Those marshals, if they would like to divulge their information, they are free to do so as United States citizens. But there are privacy agreements, attorney-client privilege, that is clearly not being able to be pursued in this fashion. So my opinion does not matter. What matters is the law. I do not serve in the Department of Justice, therefore I cannot answer your question.
Unfortunately, I don't have any information to divulge. As part of my point, the Department of Justice won't tell them why they are not being represented.
The senior senator from Nevada.
Thank you. Madam President, I rise to join my good colleague, Senator Rosen, and my other colleagues in urging our friend and senator from Arkansas to allow the nomination of these candidates for U.S. Attorney and U.S. Marshal to move forward. And let me just start by answering the question that you've posed to both of my colleagues, because I think it needs to be reframed. I think the premise really is this. There's no doubt that your ultimate goal here, and you have an ultimate goal that you're trying to achieve, and I don't question that. I do question, though, the procedure and the means by which you achieve to succeed in your goal. And that's what we're talking about, Senator Cotton. Because at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is literally stand for U.S. Marshals while at the same time harming the U.S. Marshal Service by not allowing two nominees to go before and get appointed to the U.S. Marshal Service. Likewise, you're adding to that U.S. attorneys across the country, including one in the state of Nevada, who are on the front lines of the law and order that we need in this country. As you well know, U.S. attorneys work with U.S. Marshals across the country to address violent crime in this country and prosecute it, to address drug trafficking, human trafficking, murders, and so on. And so the means by what you are trying to achieve here is actually harming law and order across the country. And I don't think you intend to do that. I hope not. But that's what we're questioning right now, is the means by what you're trying to achieve there. So what we are asking for you is to reconsider. Because at the end of the day, and I heard you earlier, and I think you made some comment about saying, sorry, in your lawyers have to wait to get confirmed in a week or two. Well, you know better. These aren't just lawyers. You know U.S. attorneys across this country are on the front lines of law and order. They are key to prosecuting essential crimes that we need to address in this country, including working with our U.S. attorney or U.S. Marshals, along with the FBI and other essential federal agencies. So I would ask that you reconsider the means by which you're trying to achieve your goal, because in Nevada, the position of U.S. Attorney has been vacant for a full year. The President has nominated Jason Frierson for that role, and as you've heard, Senator Rosen and I both support this excellent candidate, and the full Senate needs to confirm him and let him get to work. You've heard his background. He's more than qualified for this position, which I'm not hearing from you that you have concerns about his qualification. But he is essential to ensure that we get somebody in place, confirmed very swiftly, so that he can get to work on behalf of the people of the state of Nevada and be on the front lines of addressing and ensuring we have law and order, not only in Nevada, but across the country in these other states. So my question to you, Senator Cotton, is would you reconsider the means by which you're trying to achieve your goal so that you are not harming those men and women who are on the front lines of law and order across the country, including here in the state of Nevada that we're talking about, and you will hear from some of my other colleagues. And so I pose the question to you, Senator,
Well,
through the
so
chair.
if that's the question to me, then no, I reject the premise of your question. I'm not harming law enforcement. I am standing up for law enforcement. Once again, if you deny 4 U.S. Marshals legal representation because they stood up to left-wing street militias, which may be unpopular in certain quarters of your party, then you cause every marshal across the country, for that matter, every law enforcement official across the country, to doubt whether their political superiors are going to defend them in the future. Look, if you want to have a broader debate about law enforcement, I can, but we're going to be here for a long time. It's your party that voted in lockstep for the First Step Act that let thousands of violent felons back on the street who have now committed innumerable violent crimes. It's your party who marched and chanted in the streets for defunding the police. It's the Democratic floor leader who blocked my resolution in the summer of 2020 to condemn the defund the police movement. You all voted in lockstep to confirm Vanita Gupta, the Associate Attorney General, who's responsible ultimately for these decisions. Even though I and other Republicans cautioned you she would use her position to wage a war on the police from the Department of Justice. That's what's happening now, and I'm standing up for law enforcement.
Madam President.
The senator from Nevada yield
Yes.
for a point.
Yes.
The First Step Act, the Democrats did the First Step Act. The Republicans were in a majority. It was a bill sponsored by Senator Grassley, Durbin, Lee, and many others. And who signed it into law? Donald Trump signed it into law, the so-called Democratic measure.
The senior senator from Nevada.
So, Madam President, and I'm disappointed because I hear my colleague, but he's not listening. He keeps continuing to use the same talking point that he's defending law enforcement, when at the same time he is harming law enforcement across the country. This really is nonsensical. It does not make sense to not only me and my colleagues, but to the general public that's watching. When we are talking about pointing positions to the U.S. Marshals Service, to U.S. Attorney's offices across the country, they're essential to addressing what we see across the country and ensuring that there is law and order. And so it's the means by which you are trying to achieve your goal which we would ask you to consider. And unfortunately, I'm not hearing from my colleague from Arkansas that he's willing to reconsider it and stand up for law and order across this country and support the U.S. Attorney's offices and the marshals that need to be appointed. I yield the floor.
President.
The junior senator from Arkansas.
To respond to the senator from Illinois, yes, it's true that President Trump signed the First Step Act. The First Step Act was the worst mistake of the Trump administration. Yes, it's true that a number of Republican senators voted for it. They were wrong. They didn't start demanding that we defund the police in the summer of 2020. They condemned that. They stood up with law enforcement. I yield the floor.
Madam President.
The junior senator from Illinois.
Thank you, Madam President. I join my colleagues, the senators from Nevada, Minnesota, with my frustration as why we're here today. Today, I'm joining them in urging my colleagues to join me in calling for the swift confirmation of Chief LaDawn Reynolds to be the U.S. Marshal for the Northern District of Illinois. As a seasoned law enforcement officer, Chief Reynolds is more than ready to take on the challenges of this important leadership role, including playing a key part in addressing the rising violent crime devastating our communities in Northern Illinois. And yet, the only reason he is not already confirmed to this position is because of a hold from Senator Cotton, a hold that is completely unrelated to Chief Reynolds' immense qualifications. These qualifications include serving with distinction as the Chief of Police of Oak Park Police Department for nearly 30 years, teaching law enforcement officers about the importance of community-oriented policing at the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board Executive Institute, and working to protect communities from rising hate as a board member on Governor Pritzker's Commission on Discrimination and Hate Crimes. Senator Durbin and I carefully reviewed Chief Reynolds' experience and expertise. It is clear to us and the White House that he is the best fit for the job. What we're asking for now is simply to let Reynolds get to work. Let him take charge of an office that has already gone without Senate-confirmed leadership for 4 years. We need to have a confirmed U.S. Marshal leading federal law enforcement operations to secure our federal courthouses and capture violent fugitives of the law. As U.S. Marshal, Reynolds would also play an important role in the Biden administration's multi-jurisdictional strike force to investigate and prosecute gun traffickers channeling deadly weapons into the city of Chicago. Every day, there are news stories of horrifying and often deadly impacts of rising violent crimes in the Northern District of Illinois. In fact, last year was one of the city of Chicago's deadliest in decades. But statistics alone cannot fully describe the devastation our communities have endured. For so many Chicagoans, the presence of gun violence is a constant source of trauma and grief in their day-to-day lives. It is painful and gut-wrenching to see this sort of senseless violence happen again and again. We cannot wait any longer to advance Reynolds' confirmation, especially not for his nomination to be used as a pawn in Senator Cotton to expedite a response to his unrelated pending inquiry to the U.S. Department of Justice. Instead, we must act to make sure that the Northern District of Illinois U.S. Marshal's Office has the leadership it needs to fulfill its mission of administering justice and enforcing the law. If Senator Cotton is serious about tackling violent crime and making our communities safer, then we must move forward with confirming LaDawn Reynolds to be the next U.S. Marshal for the Northern District of Illinois now. Chief Reynolds' nomination has my full support, and I request that Senator Cotton lift his blanket hold on the U.S. Attorney and U.S. Marshal nominees pending consideration before the Senate, including Reynolds' nomination. Thank you, and I yield back.
Madam President,
The junior senator from Arkansas.
we keep hearing that this is unrelated, as if like I'm upset with something the Coast Guard did, or that the Corps of Engineers want to approve some water improvement project in Arkansas. These are Department of Justice nominees, and right now the Department of Justice is not standing up for law enforcement officers by hanging these four marshals out to dry. That's why I'm not agreeing to fast-track these nominees. I'm not going to agree to fast-track political nominees while the Department of Justice hangs out to dry career law enforcement officers. I yield the floor.
The senior senator from Ohio.
Fast track? Fast tracks? Senator Cortez Masto said it's been a year since they've had a U.S. attorney confirmed sitting in Nevada. In Ohio now, it's been, let me count the days, 404 days since 6 million people in the Northern District of Ohio last had a permanent U.S. attorney leading the office, and Senator Cotton, with his demagoguery, comes down here and talks about fast track. I don't know what speed they move in Arkansas, but I would not consider what we're trying to do fast track. They've been vetted. Senator Portman supports this nominee, but let me talk about that. So we know the pandemic's caused an alarming rise in violent crime, especially gun crimes. The Northern District of Ohio, which includes Toledo, Cleveland, Akron, Canton, Youngstown, Mansfield, Warren, cities in basically the north half of the state. The U.S. Attorney's has the highest caseload in the last 30 years, filing a record 846 indictments in 2021 alone, without a full-time confirmed U.S. attorney. Even before the pandemic, the district had a staggering caseload after reaching a record low in 2016 with only 363 new cases through, Senator Cotton, I might add, through the Obama administration. The number of new cases began to climb in 2017 at the beginning of the Trump administration. If you want to play those games, Senator Cotton, the number of new cases rose to 706 in 2018, has kept climbing since. Last year, 170 homicides in the city of Cleveland, where my wife and I live, another 30-year record, not to mention a surge in carjackings. We need to fill key law enforcement positions in Ohio, as Senator Cortez Masto said, as Senator Durbin said, and in their states, and Senator Rosen and Senator Duckworth. We need to fill these key law enforcement positions. I hear from Ohio police officers they're in desperate need of help, while we, through, Senator Cotton and others accuse Democrats of undermining police, or whatever term they use, a term that none of us use. And when we have supported local governments with more dollars so they can hire more police, while you oppose those same positions, as we know. So we're working with local police to get them that help. Whether it's confirming U.S. Marshals, whether it's confirming U.S. attorneys, Thankfully, we have an extremely qualified nominee in Ohio that's ready and eager to serve. The only thing standing in her way is the U.S. Senate, and apparently the only thing standing in the Senate's way is Senator Cotton, although I'm sure somebody else would be willing to take his place. Marissa Darden is a seasoned prosecutor, extensive experience, lead attorney in both civil and criminal cases. As an assistant U.S. attorney in the Northern District, she was recognized for her work on several cases involving highly complex legal issues. She received the National High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Award for Outstanding Opioid Investigation Effort in 2016, for Outstanding Investigative Effort in 2019. Listen to what some people have said. Federal District Judge, Court Judge Benita Pearson, you can be assured that Ms. Darden will fiercely enforce the law while treating all, attorneys, staff, the accused, and the community with respect and appropriate sensitivity. Former Acting U.S. Attorney Justin Herdman, nominated by President Trump, supported by Senator Portman and me both. U.S. Attorney Justin Herdman, the last confirmed U.S. attorney in the Northern District described her as an attorney of outstanding ability and unquestioned integrity. He said she's a leader who has a proven track record of delivering results inside and outside the courtroom. First Assistant Federal Public Defender Jacqueline Johnson, she told us this was her first recommendation for a U.S. attorney in 38 years of practicing in the Northern District. She said she based her recommendation or belief that Ms. Darden possesses the intellect, vision, temperament, and judgment needed to lead the U.S. Attorney's Office during this perilous season. DEA Special Agent in Charge Keith Martin, 26 years of experience, she's one of the best he's ever encountered, he said. He explained she is phenomenal in her interaction with law enforcement. Cooperative, stands on her principles. I can't imagine a better choice. It's because of these qualifications, I repeat, that Senator Portman also supports Ms. Darden's nomination. But confirmation would also be historic, making her the first African-American woman to ever serve as a U.S. attorney in Ohio. Unfortunately, Senator Cotton blocks his nomination in addition to these 8 other law enforcement nominees. By his own admission, his objections, these nominees have nothing to do with their qualifications. I support his desire to get answers from DOJ. He should get them. But the solution for his disagreement with DOJ is not that the 6 million Ohio citizens pay a price, or the millions of citizens in Illinois or Nevada pay a price, or Minnesota or anywhere. Last thing I'll say, Madam President, last week I spoke with police officers, one of the many kind of roundtable Zooms I do around the state. Police officers from around the state. One officer conveyed his college frustration with politics today. He told me that officers in his department have begun leaving letters on their lockers that say, if they're killed in the line of duty, they want no elected officials invited to their funerals. He said the notes don't say no Democrats, no Republicans, they say no elected officials. A whole bunch of the reason for that is the gamesmanship we see right now, that we're not willing to confirm U.S. attorneys, U.S. marshals, in many cases, federal district judges, just because somebody's been offended by the lack of a letter or something somebody at the Justice Department said to them. The fact is, we need to do this. It will help our states. It will help our country combat crime. Let's heed this officer's warning and come together to get qualified and talented law enforcement officials and professionals on the job. Thank you, Madam President.
Madam President.
The junior senator from Arkansas.
So contrary to what the senator from Ohio says, I'm not offended by the lack of a letter. I'm not offended by something someone said. I'm offended that 4 U.S. Marshals have to decide whether they're going to have enough money to buy Christmas gifts for their kids, pay their mortgage next month, put braces on their kids, send them to summer camp, because that's the position that the Department of Justice has put them in. To recap, 4 U.S. Marshals were among dozens deployed to Portland last summer to guard the courthouse from left-wing street militias. They were targeted with blinding lasers, ball bearings, fireworks. There was an effort to barricade them into the courthouse and set it afire to burn them alive. Now, left-wing activists and left-wing organizations like the ACLU are suing them, and the Department of Justice won't provide them representation, won't even tell them why they're not providing them representation. Maybe they engaged in some kind of misconduct. Maybe it was excessive force. That would be strange, because all 4 of these deputy marshals are now back on unrestricted active duty with the Special Operations Group of the Marshal Service, the element most likely to be sent into the most dangerous circumstances and have to use violence and include lethal violence. It would be pretty strange to send them back to the Special Operations Group with no restrictions if they engaged in some kind of misconduct in Portland. That's what this is about, and what it does to undermine the faith and confidence of every career law enforcement professional in the Department of Justice. So no, I will not agree to fast-track political nominees to the department when the department leadership is hanging out to dry career law enforcement officers.
Senator, yield for a question. I ask a question to the chair. Has the senator been given a privacy waiver by the one marshal that the Department of Justice is not going to defend?
No, I have not, but I know that the response that marshal received was that the denial of representation was not in the interest of the United States. No
Madam
more
President,
facts, no
how
more
much time do we
explanation.
have? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No more facts, no more explanation. Just like the three who are waiting for a determination, have been waiting for more than a year, do not have any fact-based explanation.
Madam President, how much time do I have remaining?
The 1 minute and 13 seconds.
Madam President, that last admission by the senator from Arkansas tells the whole story. He doesn't even know why the department is turning down representation of one person out of 74. They have agreed to represent 70 of these U.S. Marshal employees, and they've said they will represent them. And 3 are under review. 1 has been turned down, and he hasn't received a privacy waiver, so he doesn't know why. I don't know why either. But you know who's paying the price for it? Millions of Americans are asking for federal law enforcement to be adequately staffed to do their job. The U.S. attorneys and the U.S. Marshals that want to keep us safe and be part of the team to do that. And because this senator suspects there may be something suspicious about this, he doesn't have a privacy waiver, he's going to hold up those officials throughout the United States and put their communities in peril. Tell me that that is devotion to law enforcement.
Madam President,
The junior senator from Arkansas.
this is exactly the point. A privacy waiver or not, what does it matter? Here's what we do know. Here's what we do know, that none of these 4 know why they were denied representation or why they haven't had a determination. We know that. And we know that they were sent back on unrestricted active duty to the Special Operations Group. I think the Department of Justice political leadership owes these brave law enforcement officers an answer before it hangs them out to dry and exposes them to risk of financial ruin and bankruptcy.
Is all time yielded back?
Yield back.
Under the previous order, the question occurs on the Wallander nomination. Is there a sufficient second? There appears to be. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin, Mr. Barrasso, Mr. Bennett, Mrs. Blackburn, Mr. Blumenthal, Mr. Blunt. Mr. Booker, Mr. Bozeman, Mr. Braun, Mr. Brown, Mr. Burr,